Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez didn't just ask a question in Congress, she dropped a moral grenade that silenced the room. In one explosive moment she forced America to confront a truth many would rather ignore: family separation wasn't a mistake, it was a choice. A choice that made the United States look less like a beacon of freedom and more like a nation willing to break its own promises for the sake of politics. When AOC looked across the table and asked whether the U.S. had violated international human rights agreements, the answer was undeniable. No panelist could defend it. And as she pulled out the memo, the signatures, the undeniable evidence, the walls of denial began to crack.
As members of the United Nations signed on into an international human rights agreement saying very clearly that family separation is a violation of international human rights, and then we pursued a policy that violates human rights. Mr. Chair, I was looking, how did we get to this point? How did we get to this point where we take children out of mothers' and fathers' arms? And, it dated back, family separation in the way that we have seen it, where we take children away from their parents without due process, began last year under Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen. But I had to dig further, and our staff dug further. But where did this start within the administration? She implemented it. And we found a memo. Dates back to April 23rd of 2018, where there was an official recommendation to, quote, pursue prosecution of all amenable adults who cross our border, quote, illegally, even though this applied to legal asylum seekers in practice, including those presenting with a family unit between ports of entry in coordination with DOJ. Here is the memo that I would like to submit to the congressional record.
What is the date on that?
It is the memorandum for the Secretary from Homeland Security.
Date.
April 23rd, 2018, subject: increasing prosecutions of immigration violations.
Without objection.
And so I looked at this memo, and it seems like this is the source of it. And it seems as though, Mr. Homan, that you are the author. It says here from yourself, Kevin Mikulinen, and Francis Cisna. Is this correct? Did you sign the memo?
I'd have to see what you...
I'd be happy to provide it. And we'll provide it over, but I would like to note that here it says the official recommendation. There were 3 different options presented. The third included the option for family separation. This initiative would pursue prosecution of all amenable adults, including those presenting with a family unit. Mr. Homan, your name is on this. Is this correct?
Yes, I signed that memo.
So you are the author of the family separation policy?
I am not the author of this memo.
You're not the author, but you signed the memo.
Yes, a zero tolerance memo.
So you provided the official recommendation to Secretary Nielsen on for the United States to pursue family separation.
I gave Secretary Nielsen numerous recommendations on how to secure the border and save lives.
But it says here that you gave her numerous options, but the recommendation was option 3, family separation.
What I'm saying, this is not the only paper where we've given the Secretary numerous options to secure the border and save lives.
And so the recommendation, of the many that you recommended family separation.
I recommended zero tolerance.
Which includes family separation.
The same as is with every U.S. citizen parent gets arrested when they're with a child.
Zero tolerance was interpreted as the policy that separated children from their
If I get arrested for DUI and I have a young child in the car, I'm going to be separated. When I was a police officer in New York and I arrested a father for domestic violence, I separated that father
Mr.
from his
Homan,
family.
with all due respect, legal asylees are not charged with any crime.
When you're into the country illegally, it's violation 8 United States Code 1325.
Seeking asylum is legal.
If you want to seek asylum, you go through the port of entry, do it the legal way. The Attorney General of the United States has made that clear.
Okay. Mr. Chair, the memo is submitted to the record for review. Inspector General Costello, one last thing. Is there a record, based on reports throughout the year, and in our hearing earlier this year, we spoke with Ms. Juarez, a mother who lost her child due to inhumane conditions in the facilities. We learned that there is no accurate record and no policy being held of people who are pregnant and people who endure.
But this clash wasn't just about policy. It was about values, accountability, and the soul of a nation. When Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez leaned forward and asked whether the United States had violated international human rights agreements, the entire hearing shifted. It wasn't a hypothetical, it wasn't a partisan talking point, it was a direct challenge to the moral core of American policy. And the answer she received was devastating. Professor Mukherjee confirmed what many suspected under international law: family separation is a violation of basic human rights. The U.S. had signed agreements pledging to protect family unity, and yet it chose to tear children from their parents' arms. The silence that followed told its own story. Not a single panel member raised their hand to defend family separation as a deterrent. No one even attempted to argue it was effective. In that moment, the policy was stripped of any thin justification and exposed for what it truly was: cruelty dressed up as enforcement. AOC reframed the debate entirely. This wasn't just a matter of border management or legal codes, it was a moral indictment. By citing international law, she reminded everyone that the world was watching. America couldn't claim to be a defender of freedom abroad while openly breaking its promises at home. But as powerful as that moment was, the real shock came when AOC revealed the document that started it all. AOC and her staff didn't stop at outrage, they dug until they found the origin of the policy. What they discovered was a memo dated April 23, 2018. On the surface it looked like another bureaucratic document, but inside its pages was a chilling recommendation: prosecute every adult crossing the border, even asylum seekers arriving with children. This wasn't an accident or a misunderstanding, it was option 3 spelled out in black and white, fully aware it meant family separation. The memo didn't just authorize cruelty, it recommended it. And when AOC held it up in that hearing, the room felt the weight of those words. What made the moment explosive wasn't just the existence of the memo, it was the signature at the bottom. Tom Homan's name. The man sitting just a few feet away trying to distance himself from the fallout was tied directly to the policy that scarred thousands of families. AOC's confrontation turned abstract outrage into concrete evidence. She showed that family separation wasn't an accident of enforcement, it was the result of a deliberate decision signed and delivered. And when she pressed Homan to acknowledge his role, the tension in the room hit its breaking point. When AOC looked Tom Homan in the eye and asked if he signed the memo, the air in the chamber grew heavier. Homan admitted his signature was there, but he immediately tried to wriggle free from accountability. "I'm not the author," he insisted. It was an almost surreal moment. The man whose name was literally on the document tried to downplay his role, as if the ink on the page didn't matter. AOC wasn't buying it. She cut through his evasions, pointing out that it wasn't just about who typed the words, it was about who endorsed them, who pushed them forward, who made sure they landed on the secretary's desk. And in this case, Homan's signature wasn't a formality, it was complicity. The exchange revealed a deeper truth about power in Washington: nobody ever wants to own the decisions that cause the most pain. Policies like family separation are designed in conference rooms, buried under layers of options and recommendations, so that when the fallout comes, the architects can hide behind technicalities. But AOC refused to let that happen. By tying Homan's name to the suffering caused, she turned a faceless policy into a story of accountability. She reminded everyone watching that behind every bureaucratic memo are real people, children and parents who paid the price. And Homan's attempt to distance himself only set the stage for his next defense, one that would collapse under its own weight. Faced with AOC's relentless questioning, Tom Homan reached for a familiar defense comparison. He argued that separating families wasn't unique to immigration, it happened every day in law enforcement. If a parent was arrested for DUI, the child was separated. If someone committed domestic violence, the child was separated. To Homan, family separation at the border was nothing more than zero-tolerance standard procedure applied consistently. But AOC tore that narrative apart. She reminded the room and everyone watching that asylum seekers are not criminals. Seeking refuge is a legal right protected by U.S. and international law. To equate desperate families fleeing violence with shoplifters or drunk drivers was not only misleading, but it was also dehumanizing. Her response cut through the bureaucratic spin. Homan's comparison might have sounded logical on paper, but in practice it collapsed under its own contradictions. Arresting a criminal after a crime is not the same as punishing a mother for trying to keep her child alive. In that moment, the debate shifted from legal technicalities to human values. Was America willing to criminalize hope, to turn its back on the very principles it claimed to uphold? AOC made it clear what Homan defended as law and order was in reality cruelty masquerading as justice. And just when the defense began to unravel, AOC revealed something even more disturbing: the records that didn't exist. As if the signed memo and evasive answers weren't damning enough, AOC pushed the hearing into even darker territory: records, or rather the shocking absence of them. She raised a chilling question: where were the logs of children taken from their parents? Where were the records of pregnant women, or the women who suffered miscarriages while in custody? The answer was as disturbing as the question. The Inspector General admitted that accurate records didn't exist in many cases. Custody logs were kept inconsistently, scattered across facilities, often inaccessible or incomplete. In plain terms, the government had separated families and then failed to keep track of them. This wasn't just sloppy paperwork, it was systemic neglect. Without records, there could be no accountability. A child could vanish into the system, and no one could be held responsible. A mother could lose her pregnancy, and there would be no official acknowledgement of what she endured. AOC's questioning turned the abstract horror of policy into something visceral. This wasn't just about laws on paper, it was about the dignity and lives of people made invisible by design. By exposing the void where records should have been, she revealed how cruelty doesn't just traumatize, it erases. And with that revelation, the confrontation moved beyond policy failure into something far deeper: a test of America's conscience. The missing records weren't just a bureaucratic mistake, they were the perfect shield for avoiding accountability. If no one knew where children were, if no data existed on miscarriages or conditions inside detention centers, then no official could ever be held responsible. That invisibility wasn't an accident, it was a weapon. Families were left in limbo, parents torn apart from their children with no way to track them, and pregnant women endured unthinkable trauma without acknowledgement. The so-called policy of zero tolerance wasn't about law, order, or safety, it was about deterrence through suffering, about sending a message no matter the human cost. AOC's relentless questioning stripped away the excuses. She showed that this wasn't a story of mismanagement, it was a story of deliberate cruelty. And behind every missing log and every unanswered question was a scarred family that might never heal. But the confrontation was still building toward an even larger question: America's identity itself. By the time AOC finished pressing Tom Homan, the issue had grown far bigger than one memo or one official's denial. What was really on trial wasn't just the policy of family separation, it was America's identity. Could a nation that preached liberty, justice, and human rights still claim moral authority while knowingly tearing families apart? AOC reframed the debate in stark terms. This wasn't a dispute about border management, it was about values. The United States had signed international agreements promising to protect families, yet here it was, using children as leverage in a political battle. Every denial, every evasive answer only highlighted the hypocrisy. The clash revealed a disturbing truth: cruelty had become policy and accountability had become optional. While officials argued over language and legal codes, families paid the price with trauma that would last a lifetime. And that left a haunting question hanging in the air: if America abandons its own values at the border, what does it stand for anywhere else? In the end, the hearing exposed more than memos and evasions, it exposed a nation at a crossroads. Family separation wasn't an accident, it was a calculated choice, carried out without records, without accountability, and without humanity. AOC's confrontation forced America to look in the mirror and ask, what do we stand for? If freedom and justice can be suspended at the border, can they be trusted anywhere? Tell us what you think below, and don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories.